In this video, we're going to take a look at how to make the classic memory game, Simon. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to resize this form a little bit. We're also going to change the back color so the buttons are a little easier to see. Now you can change the back color of your form to whatever you want. I'm going to make mine black. So just like that. We have a black ground. The next thing we need to do is we need to open our toolbox. Now, like I've said in many of the videos, if you cannot see your toolbox, Control-Alt-X will bring open that toolbox. We're going to double click label. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to get this first label. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and size it, get it the right size that we're happy with. We also want to change the color and we want to get rid of the text. The reason we want to do that is so we can just simply copy and paste the rest of the colors that we're going to need. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this back color to red. And I want to make sure that this says red. So see how this says 192.00? That's not what we want. We want it to say red because it's much easier to handle those colors. I'm going to leave label 1 for right now. I need to change the name of this label, and I'm going to change it to LBL. That way I know it's a label, and I'm going to call it red because it's going to represent the red color. The next thing I need to do is I need to make this a little bigger, and that is handled by the auto size property. Right here, you'll notice the auto size is set to true. What we want to do is we want to double click it and we want to change it to false. This will allow us to make the label as big as we want. So I'm happy with that size right there. I don't want it to say label 1. I don't want it to say anything. So I'm going to scroll to the text property. I'm going to delete where it says label 1. Well, all I need to do now is I need to copy and paste this. So I'm going to hold Control. I'm going to hit C, Control V, as in Victor. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this one to green. So I'll say LBL green. And you can put these colors anywhere you want. I'm going to put mine, right across from one another, right next to one another. Again, we want this to say green. So again, that says 0192, maybe the one above it. Nope, that's lime. I want it to say green, and I can look for it in here. So if I type in, see here, green, there we go, it's green. Then I can make the next one blue. I want to make sure I change that other one to LBL green. I did. I'll make this one blue. So we can probably just type in blue and get the color we want. We can. And then what I'm going to do is right here where it says name, I'm going to make this LBL blue. The last color I need is yellow. So I'm going to change the name of this to LBL yellow. And then we're going to change that color. And this will be the buttons that we need for Simon. So we'll just type in yellow, and there we go. Going to move this up just a little bit. Want to make my form a little bit bigger. Move it down because we actually need a title for this. I mean, because we don't need a title, but we're going to put a title. I'm going to open up my toolbox. Double click, not an image list because I don't need an image list. What I need is that label. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now for this one, I'm going to change the font. I'm going to make it quite a bit bigger so we can actually see it. And then I'm going to choose, let's see here, modern number 20. And then I need to change that for color because we want it to look a little better. So maybe a blue. Let's see how that looks. Yep, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to change this name of this. Now this is not going to do anything other than show us the title, but it's good programming practice to have everything labeled. So I'm going to leave that there. Label 1, I'm going to change it to Simon Game. There we go. I want that to look a little bit bigger. It's not as big as I want it to be. So we'll just make it a little bit bigger. Let's try that. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, kind of center it there. The last thing we need on our form, actually it's not the last thing we need. The last thing we need on the form is a button, but then we're going to need some timers. Now this button is going to serve as our start button. We can put everything into form load, but if we do that, we may not see the first color that is selected, so that's why we're going to have a start button. So I'm going to call this BTN start, and I'm simply going to change that text from button 1 to start. And then let's go ahead and change that font as well. Make it look a little bit bigger so it's a little easier to read. Yeah, that looks good. Now the next thing we need is we need 4 timers. So we're going to open our toolbox and we're going to go ahead and put in 4 timers and talk about what those, the purpose that they will serve. So when you have your toolbox open, you're going to scroll down to the T's and we're looking for timer. We need 4 of these. So I'm going to double click once, twice, 3 times, and then a 4th time. So you'll notice they are down here at the bottom. I said the button was the last thing we needed on our form, but it's not the last thing we need. So let's start with timer 1. This is going to be our start timer. Anytime you have multiple objects of the same type, like we have 4 timers here, you definitely want to name them. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this first one TMR for timer, and we're going to call it start. The interval we're going to set to approximately half a second. This interval works based on milliseconds. Now it's never going to be exact, it's an approximate time. So it's not going to be exactly half a second, but it's going to be approximately around half a second. You always want to make sure 99% of the time when you create a timer, you want them to not be enabled. You want them enabled to be false. Otherwise, once this interval hits, it's going to start executing that code inside of it. So we're going to be turning these timers on and off, or starting and stopping them as we move through our code. The second timer that we need is a reset, and we're going to make this 500 as well, and we're going to call this TMR reset, and that's going to reset the colors. We need the colors to light up to show the use of the color, but then what we need to do is actually reset them back to the standard colors, and that's why we wanted to make it red, green, blue, and yellow instead of using those numbers, because it's a lot easier just to use the word of the colors rather than the color combinations. Okay, the third timer we're going to have is user reset. Now this is going to be 150. When the user clicks on the color, we need it to light up. We need to play the sound, but then we need to revert it back to its original colors. So we're going to set the interval to about 150. If you want it to be faster, you can make it faster if you want. 150 seems to be where I was most happy. So we just call this one user reset. And that's, again, so when the user selects the color and it lights up, it also resets back to the original colors. The last one we need is a pause. Now this pause we're going to set at 1200, and this is so after the user gets done entering the sequence, there's a slight pause so the computer can go back and display the new sequence of colors. If it does it right after the user clicks, the user may not be ready. So we're going to give the user roughly about a second just to pay attention and make sure they're watching the sequence of colors. So we're just going to call this one TMR pause. All right, with that, we are ready to start the coding portion. So we're going to double click our form. Now the first thing we need to do is we're going to need some global variables. So right here, I'm going to go right below public class form1. I'm going to make some variables. The first one I need is list colors. And I'm going to do this as a new array list. An array list is a dynamic array, and what it will allow us to do is to add things on to the array list for as many colors as the user wants to do. I also need to know the current color, because I need to make sure that the current color that we're on matches what the user has clicked. Now, if you don't know what I mean by that, you will. We also need the current index that we're in, because the array list is going to have an index, and we need to get the current index so we can pull that current color. We also need user color, because we need to store that, and we need to make sure it matches the current color. And then the last thing we need is how many they've gotten correct. So we're going to do that as current correct. And what we're going to do with current correct is as they score more and more points, we're actually going to update it so the colors traverse through the sequence quite a bit faster. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create a custom sub called get new color. Now, anytime you have code, that's going to repeat, and we're going to get a new color every single time the user gets the sequence correct. We're going to keep reusing code. Now, one way to do this is to put it into all 4 labels. I don't want to do that because then it's going to get congested very quickly, and it's very hard to read. Will the code work? Absolutely, but what we can do instead is just simply call this sub get new color. That will run it as many times or that we can run whenever we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to do R&D num, and that's going to be a new random. That's because we need to pick a random number between 1 and 4, and based on the number that is selected, that chooses the color. The next thing we need is num, because we got to store that random number somewhere. So I'm going to do num equals R&D num dot next. Now in the parentheses, it's important to know that this first number is inclusive. This second number is exclusive. So if I do 1 comma 4, it'll pick the number 1, it'll pick the number 2, and it'll pick the number 3. It will never pick number 4. So you always want to go one higher than you need. That's what we mean by exclusive. It's not included. Now, anytime we get a new color, that means the user has gotten the sequence correct. So I'm going to do current correct plus equals 1. Now what we also need to do before we forget is go back up here, and we want to set this equal to -1. We don't want to do that down here because every time we get a new color, it's always going to reset to -1. So when VB creates this variable, we want to set it equal to -1. That way, when we hit this and we get a new color, it sets it to 0 to start with. So that is what we have it for. Now we need a select case statement that's going to handle the start and the reset timer intervals because it needs to go faster. So what we're going to do is we're going to do select case and then correct, and then case 1, meaning if they've gotten 1 correct, then we can go ahead and speed it up a little bit. So we're going to change the start interval from 500 to 425. We're also going to do that with the reset interval to 425. Now, the next one that they can get correct when we want to speed it up is if they get 5 in a row correct. If they've gotten 5 in a row, we need to speed it up. So all I'm going to do is copy and paste this code, and I'm simply going to take it down to 350. Now you can adjust these however you would like. You can also simply speed it up by 10 milliseconds every time. But keep in mind, if you have somebody who's really good at it, the timer cannot go below 0. So if you start subtracting from the intervals, it's possible that the user may get the timer below 0. And if that happens, your program's going to crash. So we're simply going to hard code these intervals in. You can change them to whatever you want. Once they get 8 in a row correct, we need to start speeding it up significantly. Now, if they get that right and they get to 9 in a row, then what we're going to do is we're going to take it down to 100. Then if they get 10 in a row, we need to speed it up even more, and that will be the last thing, the last speed up that we do, because they're probably not going to go any further than that. So we're going to change this to 50, this to 50. We're going to go outside of our in select because we need to do another select case, and that is for the color. So we're going to do select case. What case are we selecting? What is it based on? It's based on num. So if the user, or excuse me, the computer picks a 1, and you want to spell select correctly here. There we go. So case 1, if the computer picks a 1, then we know that the current color is going to be red. So my current color is going to equal red. Now I want to make sure I put that in all lowercase. I'm going to type it in select, get rid of that red line, because if you make it uppercase and you forget to make something uppercase later on, that's going to cause a huge issue. So all we're going to do here, so we're going to do cur color equals blue. Doesn't matter what order you have these in, because it's going to be a random number. So then we're going to have green, and then case 4, I'm going to scroll down here a little bit, and then for case 4, my current color is going to be yellow. So that will take care of the increasing the timer based on how many they have correct and getting a random color. Now, what we need to do once we get the current color, we need to add that to our array list. We need to tack it on. When we add it, it'll be added on to the end, which is perfect. We don't need to do any sorting because it works on a sequence of colors. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to do list colors dot add. What am I adding? I'm adding my current color. And what that will do is automatically adjust the array list to the appropriate size, adding on that current color. Now our current index is going to be set to 0 because every time we get a new color, we need to set it back to 0. That way when the computer starts replaying the sequence for the user, it starts at the beginning. So that's why we're setting it. Then what we want to do is we want to pause the timer. We want to turn that on. So we're going to do timer pause dot start, because when we get a new color, we want to pause just for approximately a second or just slightly longer than a second so the user can get ready to see that new sequence. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our design. We're going to double click this start button, and what we're going to do is we're going to call get new color. And now when we click start, it will go ahead and it will start with that new color. All right, let's go ahead and start programming these timers. The first one we're going to do is our timer pause. So we're going to double click that. It's going to bring us to the timer pause tick event. What this means is every time that interval that we set earlier is reached, it's going to go ahead and execute the code inside. So we're going to turn the start timer on. So timer start dot start. But then what we need to do is make sure we turn this timer, this pause timer, we got to make sure we turn it off. If we don't turn it off, that means roughly every 1200 or 1200 milliseconds, or just slightly longer than a second, it's going to keep turning that start timer on. We don't want that to happen. So we're just going to do timer pause dot stop. Now what we can do is we can go back to our design. We're going to find this TMR start. We're going to double click that, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to start running or writing code for the start timer. This will start the sequence every single time. Well, remember we set the index at 0. That way the computer starts at the beginning of the sequence. And what we need is we need to get that current color. Well, what is the current color? Well, that's based on my list of colors. And what am I getting? The current index, which is going to be 0, then it'll be 1, and then so on. So we'll update all that momentarily. Then all I need is select case based on the current color. And then if it's red, make sure it's all lowercase. That's why we had it earlier. If it's red, then what I need to do is I need to change the background color of that label. I'm going to change it to a light pink. Light red I didn't think was light enough. So we're going to change it to pink. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use console.beep. We're going to set the frequency as well as the duration. So what we're going to do is label red dot back color equals color dot pink. So we'll do pink. That way it looks like a light red. Then we're going to do console.beep. Now, this can take, if you don't put anything in console.beep, it's just going to make a beep noise. We want it to do a frequency of 262. How do I know that? Because I looked up the frequency numbers that the real Simon game did, and all we're going to do is use those. What is the duration? We want it to be 350. Because if we make it any shorter, it's going to may not play all the way through. It may just sound more like static. So we're going to do the same thing for blue, and you can do this in any order that you want. Then we're going to do color.light blue, because remember we're handling the case statement, so it doesn't have to be in this same order. So I'm going to do console.beep again. Now the blue had a frequency of 392. I'm going to do the duration at 350. Then we're going to do green, and we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do the same thing, label green, dot back color equals color, dot light green. And you want to spell color correctly here. And then the green has a frequency of 330. So I'm going to do console.beep, frequency of 330, duration of 350. And this duration is based on milliseconds as well. Then we're going to do case yellow. And then we're going to do label yellow dot back color equals color dot light yellow. I want to spell that correctly. And then that has a frequency, make sure we put it in the right spot. That has a frequency of 294. So I'm going to do console.beep, and that has a frequency of 294. And I'm going to give it the same duration of 350. Once we do that, we have lit up the color. What we need to do now is we need to call the reset timer, because we need to reset the color, whatever color lit up. We need to change it back to its default color, and then we also need to turn this timer off. So I'll do stop. Now this is to prove something. When you hit timer start dot stop, it will continue executing the rest of the code. It's just not going to do another click event. So we're going to do timer reset dot start. And what we can do now is we can program that reset timer. That way it resets whatever color has been lit up back to its standard color. Now we need to do the timer reset. So what we're going to do here is we're going to reset all the colors of the labels. So my back color is going to be, for the red, is going to be color dot red. And this is why we used the words for the color. If we had used the numbers, we're going to have to remember what the combination was. We don't want to do that. You know, let's work smarter, not harder. So we're going to make the blue back to blue. We're going to make green back to green. And then we're going to make yellow back to yellow. All right, perfect. Now, if we are resetting the colors, that means they have gotten one correct. So we need to move to the next index. Now, it is possible we go beyond the bounds of our array list. If we go beyond the bounds, meaning we're trying to access an index that doesn't exist, our program's going to crash. So what we need to do is we need to check that. Because if I have three colors, I'm using index 0, index 1, and index 2. But when that third color in index 2 resets, we're going to go to index 3. But there is no index 3. So our program's going to crash. So what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if our current index is equal to our list colors .count. If it is, then we know we're one too far where we need to be. So we need to reset the index back to 0, and then we need to turn this reset timer off. So we just need to stop it. If we're not beyond the bounds of the index, then what we need to do is turn the start timer back on. So we're going to start it up again, and then our reset timer here, we're going to stop. Because remember, in our timer start, we're getting the current color based on whatever the current index is. And that's why we made it global, so it can be accessed in every single sub. Let's go ahead and talk about clicking on red, blue, green, and yellow. When the user clicks on it, how to get it to light up, how to get it to beep, and how to reset it for the user. So we're in our label red click event. So all we're going to do is program this out. When they click on it, we need it to beep. And we want it to beep at the same frequency that it did when the computer selected it. So that's 262. We want the duration to be the same. We want it to be uniformed. We want to change that back color to the same color it changed when the computer chose it. So we're going to change it to pink. There we go. Now there's a couple things that we need to do. User color equals red. Then what and we want to make sure it's all lowercase. There we go. Because we definitely don't want to run into any issues when we're testing it. put that in sub back in. Then what we need to do is we need to check that color. I could check the color inside label red, blue, yellow, and green, or I can simply write one line of code that calls our custom sub, and our custom sub is going to be called check color. So when we do our check color, we want to make sure that it matches what the user chose, but we also want to reset those colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this right here so I can reset it later. Or you can type in the code. It's up to you either way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on that timer user reset. I'm going to start that timer, and we'll fill that in a minute. Right now, it's not going to do anything, but it will momentarily. Now, there's a couple things here. If the user color equals my list of colors based on the current index I'm at, then we can move to the next index. So we're going to do current index plus equals 1. If it doesn't match, then we know they got it wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to let them know it's game over. So we're going to do message box.show. You can also use MSG box. It's up to you. And then I'm going to say you lose. And then I'm going to say sorry. And then give that message box a title, game over. There we go. Now the next thing I need to do is let them know their score. So I'll make another message box and I'll say your score was, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in their score, and we did that with current correct. That's going to hold how many they got correct, and then we'll put an exclamation mark so they can see their score. Now, the next thing we need to do, and this is completely up to you, we will let them know what the correct sequence was. So we need to use a for loop for this. I needs to start at 0 because with the array list, it starts at index 0. And I want to run to the list of colors dot count minus 1. So what I want to do is I simply want to put in a message box. So message box.show. And what I want to do is I want to say color and I. So like color 0 or index 0 was this, color 2 was this, and I'm going to put a space. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to simply output each of those using I to hold my index. So that will handle if they lose. Now, if we've gotten to the end and we've already punched in the right sequence, then what we need to do is we need to get a new color. Because we've done cur index plus equals 1, we got to make sure we don't go outside the bounds. So all we're going to do is cur index equals list of colors dot count. Then I know I'm one too far. All I need to do is get new color, and that will change. We'll go ahead, reset the entire sequence. The computer will play everything from beginning to end, including that new color that we're going to get. The next thing we need to do is handle the timer user reset. So I'm going to go right down here, timer user reset, paste it in, and then don't forget, we want to turn this timer off. So user reset dot stop, and that will stop the timer. What we need to do now, we've done red. So what we need to do now, we can go ahead and copy this because the code's very similar, and we're going to do it for green. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to change the one for green. So I'm looking on my notes here. The frequency was 330. We're going to change label red for label green, and we're going to change it to light green. And you can change the colors to whatever you want. And then user color equals green. So just like, and then we need to check the color, which we have done. And that will have everything that we need, because we're going to turn the timer user reset. We're going to turn that on when we check the color. So we're going to do the same thing for yellow and blue. Let's fast forward to where that is done. All right, a couple minor things left. What we want to do is we want to double click this form 1, In our form unload, we're going to have nothing because remember, we have that start button. But what I want to do is change from load to closing. And this will allow us, when we hit that X in the upper right-hand corner, to actually close the application. So we're going to do application.exit. And that will close the application. The next thing we want to do is also exit when they get game over. So after we let them know their score, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do application.exit. So it's going to be right after that for loop. We're going to do application.exit. Now we don't want them to be able to restart right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click the start button. And as soon as they start it and we get a new color, we're going to do btn start.visible equals false. And that will make the button disappear so they can't click it again mid-game. So let's go ahead, let's run our code, let's test it, and make sure that it actually works. We should hear sounds for all 4 colors. It shouldn't start until we hit start. And then after we enter the sequence, there should be a pause. So let's hit start. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we get red, it lit up, we're going to hit red, it should light up, and it did. There's that pause, and it did red, yellow. So I'm going to hit red, yellow. So red, yellow, blue, so red, yellow, blue. There's that pause again. So we may shorten that a little bit. I feel like it's a little too long. So red, yellow, blue, red. Okay, so this will be 5 if we get it. Red, yellow, blue, red, and then green. Now it'll pick up quite a bit, a little bit faster. And you can see it's moving slightly faster. So after green, it's back to red. So red, yellow, blue, red, green, and then back to red. So now we're at 6. What we're going to do now is we're going to get it wrong. It should tell us our score, and then we should get it correct. So red, yellow, blue. I'll go back to yellow. You lose, sorry, perfect. And we have the title, game over. Your score was 6, which is correct. And then the first color was red. So I think it was red, yellow, blue. Yeah, yellow, blue, back to red. Then I think it was green, and then back to red again. And then the last color was red, which we chose a different one because we lost. So, and it exits, and it works beautifully. So that is how you program the Simon game. Hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please take just a moment to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to help the channel grow. And we'll see you guys in the next programming video.